Welcome to Queer Becoming's Beyond Survival, the podcast where it gets better finally gets receipts. We sit down with brilliant, bold, beautifully queer humans who once found themselves stuck in a situation, a relationship, or a whole life chapter where they felt defeated. And then, through introspection, humility, courage, and action, they flip the script.
This podcast isn't about giving you advice or telling you what to do. It's a place where we ask the question, what does it look like to live beyond survival? We'll spotlight some of our most vulnerable and profound moments, the breakthroughs that took everything we had and reshaped our futures.
These are real queer people sharing real queer victories. So buckle up, hydrate, and prepare to laugh, cry, and blurt out, "You did what?" Because right here, we're not just surviving, we're becoming. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm one of the 3 hosts for this podcast. In this first episode, we're going to be sharing some of our own experiences. Before we dive in, we want to offer a bit of context for something that's part of all of our stories and will come up throughout the podcast. The 3 of us got to know each other through our participation in a personal development course called the Landmark Forum. The forum invites people to take a deep look at how they relate to themselves, others, and life. For each of us, it had a profound impact on how we live as queer people, so it's part of what we'll be sharing here. The intention of this podcast isn't to promote any one program, practice, or set of beliefs. It's simply to share the variety of incredible lives queer people are living. Elliot Baum is a multidisciplinary artist, a trained arc welder, and a Twitch streamer. His experience as a reconnecting Indigenous person informs his spirituality, which includes a variety of established modalities as well as his own intuitive approach. In his spare time, he can be found marching at protests, facilitating a support group for neurodivergent folks, or spending time with his local queer community.
All right, so let's get into it.
I'm Allison, they, them pronouns. I'm multiracial, predominantly Asian, queer and trans, specifically gender nonconforming, and I'm joining you from Birmingham, Alabama.
I'm Elliot, he, him pronouns. I'm Chicano and reconnecting to my Indigenous roots. I'm a two-spirit trans mask, and I'm joining from the Mojave Desert in Southern California.
And I'm Alex, he, they pronouns, half Indian, queer, and trans mask. I'm in North Carolina at the moment, but in 3 weeks I'll be living in Spain. All right, Elliot, let's start with your story. So, just starting from the beginning, how do you experience yourself in life today? Who is Elliot today?
Elliot today is just like a really, I don't know, like a walking big heart that's just radiating love for the world. And I would definitely also add Chaos Goblin in there in a very good way, in a very good affectionate way.
Hell yeah. Walking big heart. The hippies in the 70s would have had a field day.
Exactly.
All right. But it hasn't always been like that, right? Like how have you related to yourself before you were this big walking heart?
Yeah. I I before I was I don't know, it's like I was still that big walking heart, except it was like I don't know. I almost want to say like it's like bleeding everywhere. And like I don't know, just I felt like I was this martyr uh carrying this burden of love. Like it felt more than um and I just there was a lot of like I felt like screwed over by circumstances, and if only this were like this instead and that was like this, then then everything would be great. I'd be great if only, you know?
Yeah, I totally get that. So what did that look like in life? Like paint me a picture of what this looked like in life.
I was angry a lot. Um I think that I would look at how my life was, how circumstances around me were like growing up poor, I was really angry about that, really hopeless about that. And I also just saw myself as like almost like inherently less than other people, like less valuable, less capable. And that's a really heavy thing to carry, and it affects how you show up. And I I was very insecure and kind of just resigned. I would also definitely say I was a doomer, like full on doomer. The world sucks and it's just gonna get worse, you know? And yeah. Also really rageful. Like if I was upset, that would either be me like shutting up and never saying anything about it or just raging out on someone like a mangy dog or something, you know?
Yeah. So, walking around rageful, angry, doomer, what were your relationships like?
They were perfect and had no problems ever.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so I had a really rough relationship with my dad. It was like I mean, honestly, by the time uh, in sort of in like the later stages of I guess you could say before times, I didn't have much of a relationship with my dad. Like we would talk maybe a couple times a year, and it would be just like these really strained conversations that I don't know, it's almost like we're walking around like or not mine fields around each other so that we don't like set each other off or whatever. Um and yeah, it was I don't know, it was like this dad person was like a person I talked to, but not really someone I even really had a relationship with.
And you didn't grow up with your dad being close to you, right? Like physical proximity wise.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I just like growing up it was just me and my mom and my grandparents and I didn't actually get to meet my dad until I was 13. Um that was the first time that we ever actually like physically met. At least when I was old enough to, remember meeting him. Yeah.
Okay. All right, word. So, all right, so we've got this before picture. I know it's probably just a sliver of what things were like, but just like a snapshot of it. And then what happened? What was the what was the turning point in this hero's journey?
Yeah, so my Aunt Martita, she invited me to um, basically like an introduction to the Landmark Forum. And
What was going on in your life when she invited you? So like did she called you out of the blue? What was going on for you at the time?
I was kind of just in the thick of a lot of that despair and like a really bad depression, to be honest. I had this was just a couple years after me having flunked out of uni. I was trying to you know, I, since university didn't work out, I, pivoted and was like, let me do an art business where I finally take this art that I love and turn it into a business. And that was making like maybe $10 a month, 20 on a good month. Um, and I had just come out as non-binary to the first inner circle of people. So like my close family and friends. And in the wake of that, I had also just left my boyfriend of like 7 years. And so I was also like this was just a couple months after that, when she invited me. And so I was like really exhausted and kind of heartbroken, not just from the loss of that relationship, but just where I was at in life. I was really distraught, and I honestly just had no idea of how I was going to make it out of this hole that I felt like I was in.
Just a side note, I we've known each other for like a couple years now. I had no idea that you had an ex-boyfriend. This is like the
Yeah, oh
first time that I'm
yeah.
hearing about him.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know, I know. Yeah. And it was really serious too. Like I like we were high school sweethearts and by the time like that our relationship ended, we were both atheists, but we both used to be a bit more spiritually inclined and we used to like literally have conversations about like finding each other in the next life and then the one after that and that sort of thing. Like we were very serious. Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
So it seems like you were at a low point. So Aunt Martita calls you, and what is it that she says? What is it that had you be like, yeah, I'll come to this thing? What is it that, yeah, what was that like for you?
Um, so funny enough, she kind of was a bit more vague about it. She it was I think she was doing a like seminar and they were hosting a introduction within the seminar, but she didn't really create it that way. She sort of described it more like it's, the last session and I'm sort of graduating from this seminar and I'd love for you to be there. So she didn't really I didn't really totally know what I was getting into. Um, and we've talked about this like way after the fact where she's like, I probably should have explained a little more of what I was getting you into. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. We're good now on it. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a surprise.
Okay, cool. So you're there, you're surprised. What what happens?
Um, so like I we get to like the end of the night after, they've been talking about looking at, what we might want, what it would be like if certain things in our lives were different. Like, for me, when I was looking at like if I could have anything be different, I was like, okay, energy, because I felt exhausted. And when they were really like talking with me and having me engage with that as like, if that were to be real. Like if I had a breakthrough in energy and I actually had energy, what would my life be like? And I was like, I was crying just from thinking about it because I felt like energy was this thing that was stopping me in life. That if I just had energy, I would be able to function to, I don't know, I would be relieved from being stuck where I was. Um, and a lot of feelings were coming up and I'm like, I know there's something in here that's like blocking me. I had a feeling and I'm just like, I have no idea what it is. Um, it was a really interesting conversation. I'd never like had that kind of conversation before.
Sound like a really
Yeah.
powerful conversation to have. Like,
Yeah.
had having that type of energy been something that you'd thought of before, or was that like the first time you were present to it?
I think it was the first time I was present to the fact that I felt like energy was missing in my life. I knew I was exhausted, but it was just and it's just like one more step outside of like that, but I had just never even thought about it from that perspective. I just thought like, well, I'm exhausted all the time. This sucks. And that was kind of as far as that went, like mentally for me.
It can
Um,
really be like that when it's something that just, it's like everywhere, like exhaustion. It's like that's the water that you're swimming in. That's what you're surrounded by all the time. It doesn't really occur to you, oh, I could just have more energy. It's like life is just like this.
yeah, it's like more energy. That's not even a concept to me right now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So you talked about energy is missing, and then did you just like sign right up?
No. Um, it sounded really good. Like, it's there was a part of me that was kind of like a little bit of like this sounds too good to be true, or like I was also at the time very paranoid about manipulation. I'd been in therapy for many years and I knew so many things, very, very, very knowledgeable, very smart, and I was like, you know, I'm I'm emotionally triggered right now and I'm tired, so they're trying to manipulate me. They're trying to exhaust me into, doing this thing. And it's just, in hindsight, it's really funny because like they were just being really chill and like being like, you seem like you would like to do this and that you would benefit from it. And I'm like, you're manipulating me. No. And and it's funny too because even my aunt was offering to pay for it, and it's so funny because like I feel like it's obvious that like if someone's offering to pay for you to do a thing that you really want to do, then it's like, oh, of course, yeah. I cried so hard when she offered because it was like I think I had this thing where like I felt like I was a burden all the time. And so for her to offer to pay for me to be in this thing that she's not even a part of, it's just here you go, here, take my money and go. It was like I don't know, it almost felt like I was being attacked in a way, like even though that's not how I registered it. Like I didn't think she was attacking me, but my I physiologically was reacting as if it was, because it was like I was so afraid of being a burden that I just couldn't. I I was very resistant to accepting it. I did end up accepting it, but it took a lot of her like reassuring me, like, "Hey, I wouldn't be offering this if I wasn't comfortable giving this money. You know, I wouldn't be making this offer if I wasn't totally ready for you to accept it. You know." And I didn't end up accepting. I didn't end up registering that night. I really was insistent on I've got to sleep on it. I've got to sleep on it. And and I'm like, if I still want to do it first thing when I wake up, then I'll register. And I did. I I went to bed, went to sleep that night, cried some more before bed, honestly, because I was like feeling so emotional. And yeah, the first thing I did when I woke up was I called my aunt and I let her know that I wanted to register. And so we did it. And I was excited, but also really scared.
So
Yeah.
I
then, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say, Elliot, like, I'm so glad that you mentioned that whole thing about like feeling attacked. Because at first I didn't get it, but in listening to you, it's like it was attacking your I your identity. Like you genuinely believed you
Yeah.
were a burden, and it was like punching you in the face, but in a way towards trying to get you that energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then also knowing her, it was likely also in the direction of figuring out whatever it was that was making me feel like I was a burden from that kind of stuff, because it's just, because you can go into this work, like, you can go into the forum trying to get one thing and you get that thing, but then you also get like 50 other things that you weren't expecting. And it's like, whoa. But yeah,
Yeah.
It's really
So
funny
what
the
is
parts of our identity that we defend, even if it's something that makes our life worse. But it's like, but this is what's the case about me. I can't let go of that.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
What were you going to say, Allison?
I'm so grateful for your aunt because, ultimately, I mean, we wouldn't have met otherwise if she hadn't kind of stood for you like that. Um, but what is it that like actually shifted for you in the forum?
So, I think like the first part that kind of led to like I don't know this like domino effect of like the shift was like I realized that me having ADHD, not necessarily the getting the diagnosed with it, but having the symptoms of it showing up growing up, that I had kind of created this inner narrative that like there was something wrong with me, and that was going to constantly be something getting in the way of my functioning in life. And on the first day of the forum, I there was a conversation. I don't remember exactly what conversation it was. It might have been, when you the conversation around like when you collapse what happened um with this narrative we create about what happened. Um I realized that I had created a story about my ADHD. And it was realizing, oh, there's a story that's there that I didn't see before. I probably have a lot more stories that are there that I didn't see. And I know that this is getting in the way of me functioning. So there's probably a lot of ways I've got stuff in here that's been blocking me from functioning or having the life I'd like to have. And then also realizing that made me realize, oh, I actually have a lot more power over my life than I thought I did. Like I came into this feeling so powerless and so like at the whims of, the circumstances of the world, the circumstances of my birth, the the weather of the day. Like I felt so just uncontrolled. Yeah. Or
And what
rather, I
happened?
guess controlled, sorry. Controlled by reality, uncontrolled by myself. Yeah.
Yeah,
What was the story that you had about ADHD or you having ADHD?
Probably I don't know, like that it was a fault in me, like a flaw. Um and then also a part of me I think also questioned if it was even real. And I think that was in part because I experienced people when I would talk about ADHD around them, they would sometimes be like, well, that's not real, or everyone has ADHD nowadays, or that kind of stuff. And there was a part of me that's like, are they right? Um,
So is it
and
like a there's something wrong with me because
yeah,
I have ADHD and then in addition to that, um I don't actually do I actually have this thing?
yeah,
Or am I
yeah,
just using this as a way to be a martyr or whatever it is?
yeah. Like there's a part of me that's
Okay.
like, do I actually have a condition that, has these that has education, learning, all these things be challenging for me, or am I just actually stupid and less less capable on a more fundamental level than something like ADHD could explain, or am I lazy? Just all these other things kind of in the space of it. Yeah.
I think that's a story that a lot of people with ADHD have. I know I had developed this story about like my ADHD was a character defect, and it was something that if I just tried harder, if I just did more, then I'd be able to do what other people did. So that story about not being as capable as other people, I think, it's not just you. And it's something that is really, it can be in the background and affect everything about operating in the world. What did you see
Yeah.
that affected about, now that you saw that you had that story about it, what did you see about how it had been affecting your life?
Um, it was heavily affecting my self-esteem. I I really thought I was stupid. And even though I intellectually knew I wasn't, like, because I had good grades, uh, well, all until like the flunking of uni that I mentioned earlier. Like that was a whole other thing. But I was like A plus student. Getting B's was rare for a long time, probably until like high school. Because that's when like stuff like depression started kicking in and such. But I was a very high achiever, and but that wasn't really enough for me to feel like I was actually smart. So my self-esteem was shot. I didn't really have any sense of what I wanted to do with my life. Like I knew I was good at math, and that's about as far as that went, which I think is in part why I didn't really do so well at university. You kind of have to know a little bit of where you're going and what you want to achieve if you're going to go to university. Um, and yeah, so and as such, I didn't really have any ambitions because I kind of just thought that anything I would try that I would fail at. Um, And I think that ended up kind of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy because then that happened with going to university. I didn't really try. Like I describe it as flunking, but honestly, it was more like I went there, I kind of started doing classes, and then I started just skipping them entirely and ignoring the homework. And uh, I honestly think that I was too afraid to give it my all because I was afraid it wasn't going to be enough.
Hmm.
And it's one thing to feel like you're not enough, but like to have, quote unquote evidence that of those things, like that's another level that I was not ready to face. And
And it
yeah,
makes
it
sense that
also
if you had this, I don't know what I want to do with my life, and I'm not able to do anything that I want to do, that also that those actions of I'm not going to class, I'm not doing the stuff that's needed to do to get good grades, that you would like create this cycle.
yep.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
know what to do, but you don't know why you're not doing it. But then you think there's like, oh, well, there's a reason why. It's called, in this case, I have ADHD, but then do I really have like it sounds like that cycle. I'm familiar with it. Just
Oh
I don't think
yeah.
we've
Yeah, I
had
think
much of a
we're all
conversation about
familiar with it.
ADHD, Elliot,
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, I see myself in this for sure. I
Yeah.
know that
It
in
was
the
very
forum, like we look at those uh like the core experiences essentially. So did you see where you like your first time of feeling incapable or like believing that you were incapable?
Yeah. So I think I was 6. I'm pretty sure because I think I was in first grade and I was in, must have been my English class or language arts, I think is what they called it. And we were doing vocabulary, teachers, having us spell different words, and the teacher asked if anyone knew how to spell a certain word. I don't even remember what the word was. That's how insignificant that part was. But I was very sure I knew. I'm like, oh, I know this one. And I, shoot my hand up and I spell it, and she's like, no, it's actually spelled like this. And to be clear, she wasn't mean about it at all. She didn't say it rude or nothing. Purely the fact that I was wrong after being very confident and loud in my confidence. Uh, it was like, I wanted to like disappear, and I'm pretty sure I cried. Like, that's probably going to be like a theme in any story. Like growing up is like something happened and then I cried.
I think that's most of us.
um, yeah. And I was like, it doesn't make any sense, but for whatever reason, when that happened, I had this deep feeling of I am less capable than all of my peers. And I had this almost like this visual of like them moving forward, progressing, and I'm over here getting left behind. And again, I don't know why, but like it also came with this feeling of like I'm gonna die. I'm not gonna make it and I'm gonna die and no one's gonna be there to help me figure this out. Like those kinds of feelings, which that's a lot when you're 6 to feel all that. Like it's and that kind of just stuck with me. Yeah.
And I think it's kind of natural for 6-year-olds to have this. I mean, when we're kids, the entire world revolves around us, and also everything is terrifying and scary, or it's the best thing that's ever happened. And so I think it's a really natural reaction for a 6-year-old to have to be like, I got this wrong in front of everybody. Everybody else got it right. I was getting it right until now. I'm gonna die. Like, if you've ever talked to a 6-year-old, that's exactly how the world is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Honestly, that makes a lot of sense now that you say it like that. It's like, okay, actually, real.
All right. So you saw this, and so you saw this in the forum. And then what was that like to realize that there was a 6-year-old that had been driving this whole story and the 6-year-old had flunked out of uni, basically? What was it
hmm
like seeing that?
Um, it was like um there was a new clarity I had for myself in my life, and that's sort of like when I mentioned how I realized I was seeing these stories and like, oh, there's stories all over the place. To get that one specifically, it was a relief because 'cause I remember even like after getting that and we go on break in the forum going, get to share with the people in your life about what you're getting. I'm like, Mom, I'm not stupid. Like
Oh,
it was like it's like I kind of laugh about it, but it was a huge, huge thing for me. Um and she had seen me struggle with that for so long. She's like, you don't know how smart you are. Like I was even like in like the gifted kids program, like when I was in elementary school, I was reading at like 12th grade level when I was in 6th grade, like all these things, like all the evidence in the world couldn't make the difference. And all of my mom, all of my mom desperately wanting her only child to not feel this way. Like she had wanted that for me for so long. So it was really big for both of us, you know. It was a lot.
Props to you for calling and sharing that with your mom.
Oh yeah. Well, and it was great because we lived together and so I was able to just literally like get up and go over to her in like the next room and be like, "Yo, it finally happened," you know? Like the that it's like this thing that had been constantly like banging on the outside of my head finally actually got in there. Um yeah. Oh my God.
What was it like to finally realize that and to see her reaction?
It was like a huge weight was like lifted. Um that had been absolutely part of like what was draining my energy. Um
Hmm.
because I like thinking I was like stupid and incapable like that, that was just I mean, that was just sucking the life out of me. And so to have that like lifted, it was like, oh my God, finally I can breathe. Um Funny enough, when I shared with my mom, she was, I think, for a moment, a little annoyed with me because she's like, I've been telling you. I've been telling you, dude, and now these strangers tell you, and now you get it.
I totally feel that. There was a moment where I had shared with my parents when I was in the floor. My dad was like, I'm already over that. I know that. But
Oh my
listen, I'm
God.
crying.
But there's something to like Elliot, you said like, the strangers were telling you that, but nobody was telling you. Nobody was looking at you and going, Elliot, you're not stupid. And that was the thing, right? Like
Exactly.
it was you realized that. Like you saw yourself that that wasn't the case. No amount of somebody else telling you would have changed that until you saw it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like they just created the environment for that helped me to realize it. Like they had the questions, they helped to guide the inquiry that helped me to see that finally for myself. Like, yeah, just yeah.
Hmm. What was it that you saw? So if that story about I'm stupid, now that that's gone, that's in the past, what did you see out in front of you? What did you see you were able to do? Now that you didn't have a story about being unable to do things, what did you see you could do or want to do?
Well, for one, I saw that I could finally actually like pursue work. Um, and like it in hindsight, it feels like such a like a small world compared to like how I've blossomed since and like the world that I have now. But like back then my world was like so teeny tiny. It was basically my bedroom. Um so then I'm like, oh, like I can actually go out in the world. I can achieve things. I can learn things and not be like it's just like this basic thing. Like I could work. I don't know how to describe it. Like uh I was capable. And I was capable of being capable, if that makes sense. Like I knew that whatever I wanted to do, it was just a matter of figuring out what it was and then pursuing it. And that's all I needed to do. Like that, it was that simple. And this wall that was there between me and that was gone. Like it gave me the space to just actually live my life finally.
Just that. Ah, that's
So
so
what have
That's
you
cool.
all.
done? Like what is the living of your life been like? Or what are things that you've done that like you didn't think you were capable of doing and you just were like, you know what? I'm gonna give this thing a shot.
I'd say one of the bigger ones that's been like really cool is like I learned how to weld. Um, and it's kind of funny too how I even took that on. Welding wasn't even remotely on my radar, like at all. And a couple people in my life were just like, "Hey, have you ever thought about welding?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "I think you'd be good at it. You're creative. You've got a artistic eye, and that's valuable in the world of welding." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll check that out." I mean, because I'm like, if it involves art and something that is as fucking cool as like melting metal professionally, I get paid to do this. That sounds really sick. And it meant like that there for me that meant I mean there's technically many paths you could take to get into to break into the welding field. And for me I knew I wanted to take classes. I wanted to formally learn and that meant going back to school, which I was like, my last experience with school was, flunking out of university. So I'm like, I was nervous, but I'm like, I
Yeah.
can do this. I actually have direction. And I'm committed to like actually like showing up and giving 100%. So I took the classes and yeah, I had perfect grades. Like, well,
Are you
almost
surprised,
perfect.
Alex? I'm not surprised.
No, I'm not.
Like,
He's always
like I
done
got
smart.
Yeah, I had 4.0 each semester. I got A's in all my classes. I said perfect and I doubled back on that because like I didn't ever get like a perfect, all the points I could have gotten from every project, but also no one ever does. And these professors are like, we're still waiting on a perfect project. We have yet to see it, but we're remaining open to it, but you're not going to get that, especially like as a student, new to welding. The very first project I did was like my first attempt at welding could not actually be formally described as welding after the fact. But I went from that to being one of the better students. And like I actually remember I can't remember the question I asked, but I asked a question and my professor was like, I don't think I've been asked that once in the 15 years of being an instructor. And like that just like I was keeping myself composed because I'm in public, but this was very much like a kicking my feet in bed moment when I heard that because I'm like, do you say that to everyone?
All right, so Mr. Star student, what have you done with that now? Now what?
So, now, admittedly, I have not yet entered the welding field. And what I have done is, well, completing that was getting my certificate and my degree because I already had my general education. And now the only thing standing in my way is myself, but more specifically is me having my license, which was another thing that I had put off forever because of, no one wants someone incapable behind the wheel. Um, and I actually finally this year took the driving test for the first time ever, and I failed, but not nearly as bad as I thought I was gonna fail. I didn't make any severe errors, which I was afraid I was going to. I did hit a curb, but that actually didn't end up counting against me at all, because I hit the curb while I was parking next to it, so it's fine. Um, but and after taking the test, I'm like, oh, that wasn't remotely as scary as like I've been making it out to be for the past, oh, I don't know, decade of my life. Um, and I'm like now when I practice driving, I'm like, I'm good. I'm just now honing in and like making making like polishing the jewelry. I don't know how to describe it. Like I'm honing in on the skills so that way I could actually properly pass. But I know that right now I drive better than like half the other drivers up here who like are like literally like looking an entirely different direction and then moving, like leaving a stop sign like that. I'm like, what? What are you doing? And but anyway, like so I'm point is that I have the confidence now of knowing like that I can handle being on the road and I won't just hit someone because I am very cautious on the road. If anything, I might be a little bit of a grandpa on the road. I'm a little slow, but I would rather
Ain't
be
nothing wrong with that.
yeah. Like
Yeah.
I take it as a point of pride, if anything. And like I'm one of the people on the road that you do not have to be afraid of.
Good
Uh
deal.
yeah.
So you
Okay,
got your
so
welding certificate. You got, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
no, I was just gonna say I was actually gonna say almost the exact same thing. So you got your welding certificate, you're working towards getting your license. What else is on the horizon for you?
Um so something I've actually been thinking about is especially more recently is that once I get my license, I really want to go down to this monastery that's just like an hour and a half away from me. I didn't even know we had a monastery this close until like one of my friends mentioned it. And they allow people to basically just reserve time and stay there for a retreat, and it doesn't even like cost anything. You just have to tell them, "Hey, I'd like to come over for a week or two. When when do you have an availability for one person or a party of people?" And you get to just go and they tell you exactly what you're doing. They're like, okay, you go meditate at this time, you have food at this time, and
I
if you're
want
gonna
to
be
go.
staying, I know, like honestly we should go. It would be really
Yeah, we can
fucking
do
cool.
our girls trip.
Girls
Oh
trip
my
to the
God, that's right.
monastery.
You guys remember the girls trip?
Yes, I
I
do.
do. I keep thinking about that too because like we never went anywhere with that, but that would be awesome.
That's still like some of the funniest shit. I've never been excited for a girls trip in my life except to do with a group of like trans masked people.
I know. Oh my God,
Awesome.
I love that.
Alex Brookins is a speaker, writer, and communication coach with nearly 2 decades of experience in personal development and speaking across the United States on mental health, queer identity, and transformation. Professionally, he brings a multidisciplinary background to working with small businesses to improve their operations and take effective action towards what matters.
Hey y'all, Alex here to give a quick content warning. In this interview, I share openly about my depression and anxiety, and especially my freedom from them. I also mention some mental health issues I dealt with when I was younger, specifically suicidal ideation, self-harm, and an eating disorder. I don't get into the details of those, I just name them. If you'd like to skip this portion of my interview, skip from 47.5 minutes to 48.5 minutes.
All right, so
Mm,
Alex, if
yes.
someone met you today, they'd see a short king who's confident, free, and I don't know, like what'd you say, Elliot? Like unmessable with. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Okay. Cool. I am so glad. Speaking of being unmessable with, there are people at my house right now, and we have three dogs, and I have a little dog who just screams and hates people. So, I am unmessable with, and I kind of got to deal with him as we're doing this. So, just if you hear dogs barking, that's what's going on.
We get it. We get
Totally.
it. Tell Roger so we said hi.
Okay, I sure will.
All right. Okay, so I know you got wherever you got going on with your dogs and whatnot, but what like is that do you experience yourself as unmessable with and like has it always been that way for you? Is that just like an
I
Alex thing?
I think I do experience myself like that now. It definitely hasn't always been the case. I used to be defined by being messable with. Everything would mess with me.
Okay.
Mood.
Okay.
R- Real.
What was that like or like what were some of those things? What do you mean by that?
Um, well, I walked around with, I used to be really anxious. I had a lot of social anxiety. I was super depressed. It's just every time something happened, I was like, this is my fault and I'm bad. And I was just really scared of doing things of people. And so something would happen and I would read it as I shouldn't be doing this or I shouldn't even be this way. And so everything kind of threw me off.
Hmm.
So, like, let me see. What is something concrete? I had, yeah, let me look at when it came to other people, like interacting with other people. Um, when I was a lot younger, I felt like I couldn't talk to people at all. And then as I got older and I just had to talk to people more and more and more, I started to feel like I was in a box. And it was like a glass box where I looked like I was supposed to be normal and functioning like everybody else and able to communicate with everybody else. But
Hmm.
in reality, I had this sense that I just didn't relate. I didn't get it. I wasn't able to communicate. There was an experience that I was having inside the box. Like I felt like there was different weather inside the box, and there was no way of expressing that to people outside the box, and there was no way for them to express their experience to me. And I felt really isolated and I felt really weird and like I was never actually going to be able to connect with other people in a real way as I am.
Damn. I can see why
Not
you
to
were
be super
anxious.
heavy.
I'm
Oh
getting
my
anxious
gosh.
listening, but yeah, I think that I mean that's a great analogy. Um,
Yeah.
have
And that's
you
like that's a sorry, I was just gonna say that's a very relatable experience. Like I I I don't know how to word this. It just sounds like you're even saying something that I could relate to experiencing as a kid. Like just yeah. It's a very relatable what you've shared. Yeah.
And the irony was that I was actually doing really well in life. Like I had a really good job. I had great close friendships. Um I had a really good relationship with one of my parents and I got to speak to people. I did a lot of public speaking. And so from the outside it seemed like I really had my shit together. And then from the inside I was freaking out all the time and I felt like when I was doing things well, it was just like white-knuckling. I was just holding on for dear life. I was Mufasa at the edge of the cliff, just holding on by my fingernails. And and so even though it seemed like I had everything together, that felt to me super fragile. Like it was always like one bad thing away from all falling down.
hmm, did you did you like get help or you know make any
Yeah.
attempts to like
Yeah. I had been in therapy since 14. I went into therapy. I knew I had a lot of mental health issues. I not to get super duper into it, but suicidal ideation was something I always dealt with. Self-harm was something that I dealt with for a long time. I had an eating disorder for a long time. And so I had been in therapy. I knew something was wrong. And I'd been in 12-step recovery. I had done a lot of self-help stuff. I read a lot of self-help books and a lot of it did help. By the way, I don't want to knock any of those things. They made a huge difference. Those are the reasons that I didn't die when I was like 15. Um, and it didn't do anything for this kind of pervasive sense that everything was just one thing away from going all badly, falling down.
Ooh, I totally get that. And it's just like wild to, I don't know about you, Elliot, but it's like wild to know Alex and like imagine him like that at 14, 15, or like there's just one thing away from it all
Yeah.
falling apart. Um,
Yeah. Like a completely different person.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Do you remember, Alex, like the first time that we met in person?
Yeah, yeah. We were in Atlanta and we went to this brunch gathering. I do remember that.
I know, so gay. I didn't even know you were gonna be there. I was like, I was almost mad. I was like, why did he not tell me? And
And
like
I
I
kept it
had,
a secret too. I think we
I
had talked the day
know. I
before
was
on
like,
Zoom,
how did
and I was
everybody
like,
know this? I think my mom may have like told me, someone told me like when we were driving up, when we were driving up. But anyway, yeah, this it was like this graduate get together. Um, and yeah, I met your mom there. I had, had known her, I think more than you. I just didn't put it together that the two of you, that was you or her son. But I don't think I ever told you this before. I had had a conversation with your mom while I was there, and I asked her why she told you to do the forum. Um, and she said, she just looked me dead in my eyes and she said, because I wanted to see my son alive.
Oof.
My
And
God.
I
Oof.
almost like bust out into tears.
Hmm. That checks out. I was in a really dark place right before I did the forum. I had, and again, my life looked really good from the outside. But I felt like I was 22 at the time, no, 23 at the time, and I had always anticipated I wasn't going to live past 18. Like for some reason or another, I was just like, I'm not going to live that long. And so then I was 5 years past that, and I felt like I'd outlived my expiration date. I felt like the milk that had been stuck in the back of the fridge, and I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing with my life, and I felt like I was getting it all wrong. So yeah, and I was also super isolated. I just moved across the country and I didn't know anybody. And so I would just be in my apartment and I would get off of a Zoom call with my coworkers and it would just be this black screen staring back at me. And I would realize I was all alone in my apartment. And if I died in there, nobody would know.
Mm. Oh my God.
Where were you? Where was this in Portland?
Yeah, this was in Oregon,
Okay. How old were you at the time?
23.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. So did you go to an introduction or did she just mention it to you?
I did not go to an introduction.
No.
Okay, so here's the thing. Just a little bit of background. My parents did the Landmark Forum 28 years ago, and I'm 27 now. They did the Landmark Forum 28 years ago. That's not a coincidence. They met through the Landmark Forum, and my mom created me as a possibility. And so she had told me about this before, but had never, over the course of that 24 years, been like, you should try this for yourself. And I was so mad at her afterwards. And I was like, you saw how miserable I was and you didn't say anything. Anyway, so at the time she was like, this is that thing I told you I did. It made a big difference for me. I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to make this better for you. And I don't know what to do, but I know this made a big difference for me and I want you to do it. And so she just registered me. She sent me the website and I registered.
That's awesome. I
Wow.
remember like I had a moment too where I was mad at her. It's like, why did you say but I think I actually asked. I was like, why did you wait till he was like 23? And she was like, I honestly like we had been living the distinctions and like doing a lot of the teachings and practices of landmark and stuff, but I hadn't thought about it, you know. We did all of the other routes that people usually talk about, therapy, all of these other things. But I didn't know how else to help him. And it was there and kind of a last resort type of thing. I was like, if this made a difference for you, maybe it'll make a difference for him. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
And it sure did. Thank goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
I don't want to derail the conversation, but it's actually um that was a little bit part of that was a little bit of why my aunt actually had me do the forum because the forum is what helped her to not take that path. She was in a really dark place and she was afraid that I was gonna go that path too. And like then we know. Maybe I don't know, just wow.
yeah. What ultimately had you say yes, Alex?
My mom told me to. I basically did what my mom told me to. It's very simple. A lot of the best and worst things in my life have been not the worst things. Well, most of the best things in my life happened because my mom was like, "You're gonna do this," and I was like, "Okay."
Oh man, I love our moms.
We need to do an episode on our moms. We should have them on here.
Yeah, we totally should. God. I don't think I really thought about how all of us have like pretty close relationships with them. Um, but
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Any what was like tell me a little bit more about the forum, what it was like for you in that state. Because I know like with me, I was in a completely different place. Like I was pretty good when I did the forum, but for you, like what was it like? What did you discover about yourself?
So just when I went in, I was pretty aloof. I was pretty resigned because I'd done so much. I was like, I've dedicated 17 years of my life to getting, getting better, doing all of this better. And so I probably know everything that they're going to be saying. And then in the first 30 minutes, we turn, we had a chance to ask ourselves if there was one thing that we got out of the weekend that would make it worth it for us to actually put our whole lives into the workshop, what would it be? And I was like, if this fear of everyone and everything could be lifted, that would be worth it because nothing else has worked. And sure enough, that did happen. So let me see. That did happen. Actually, that was one of the biggest things was there's this part that's called freedom from anxiety where long story short, I learned, found out, looked around, and discovered that all of us are actually scared of one another as humans, and that it's just kind of natural for human beings to be. I don't know if it's natural, but it's certainly the case most of the time that human beings are scared of one
Normal.
another. Yeah, it's normal. It's
Yeah.
normal.
Oh
And
yeah.
these fears that I'd had that I thought were personal to me were actually universal. And that when I thought I was different from other people, that they thought they were different from me too, not because we're actually different, but because that was just what we were thinking. And also we talk about how fear is just fear. It's not an indicator of what's actually going on. And that was mind blowing to me. So that anxiety, that pervasive anxiety, that just kind of went away. It's not that it went away, but the control over it that it had over me went away. So
Hmm.
that was a huge thing. And then something else that opened up this was actually on my first day that I had not expected at all was this story that I had held on to for my whole life that I was unlovable. So this was part of the sense of being weird, being an outcast, being I'm never going to connect with somebody else was this sense of being unlovable. And so we were in a part where we look at a story that we've been holding on to as like the truth about ourselves for our whole lives that's getting in the way, that's limiting us. And what came up for me in terms of what happened where that came about was when I was younger. I think I was 6. I overheard an argument that my parents were having, and then after this argument, my mom came and told me that um, my dad had had a family before us, and he had other kids, and I put that plus my parents are unhappy with each other. 2 plus 2 equals 4. I'm the reason that my parents are unhappy with each other. And I'm the reason that my parents are together. And also, my dad obviously doesn't want me because he already had a family. And if he wanted more, if he wanted a family, he wouldn't have had this. Oh, I was a happenstance. I was not on purpose. I was an accidental little baby. And so I was like, okay, my parents didn't want kids. My dad especially didn't want kids. My parents are together in this unhappy relationship, and it's my fault. And I'm not wanted. I am I make bad things happen with other people and other people don't actually love me. This colored my whole life. And so I saw this and I was like, "Oh, maybe that's not actually the truth. Maybe it's just what I've thought is true about me and my life and my relationships."
Wow.
I know,
Oh
right?
my God. Like, damn.
Did you end up having a conversation with your parents about that moment, or did just like realizing it that was enough?
I think realizing it was mind blowing. And then I needed to talk to my parents about it. Like, I needed to talk to my dad, especially about it, because I had, up until that point, we had had no relationship. And I, because I had this perception that we didn't want to have a relationship. And so I didn't either. And it was just kind of this cycle. And so I called him and I said all of this. And I said, this is the story that I've had about you. And I have used it as an excuse for us to not have a relationship, for me to not share my life with you. And I have a really good life. And I want to be able to share that with you. You're part of the reason I have that really good life. and I'm tired of us having this distance for no reason. And he was like, I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of hard to hear. And I want you to know that just because I didn't want kids, which was the case, it never meant that I didn't want you. Because then you came along and you were pretty cool. And then we talked for like 40 minutes, which was, I think, the longest phone conversation we'd ever had before. And we started to, and at the end, I said, I love you. And we didn't really say I love you that much back and forth. And I basically spent the next 2 years, every time we talked on the phone at the end, I went, okay, I love you. And I think after a couple years, he said, I love you too. And I was like, oh my God, call the presses. Um, it was so cool. We started to build a relationship. And there's something about building a relationship where there was nothing before that is so, I don't even know. It's so transformative in life, especially to build that with my parent.
But it sounds like it wasn't only that there wasn't nothing there. You like genuinely believe that he just didn't want you.
Yeah, yeah. And you
And
know,
so
the
it,
other thing that I don't think about that often is that all of a sudden I saw all the things that he had been doing for my whole life that had actually been caring for me. My dad was the one who stayed home with me, and I was homeschooled, and so he took me to all kinds of crap. He took me to these workshops. He took me to summer camp. We would look at physics when we'd be out in the world and look at things, and he would explain things to me, and I started to see all of the ways that he'd been demonstrating his love for me that I could not see because I was so blinded by this story that he didn't care about me.
hmm. And like so was it like you felt like he was doing all of those things out of obligation before?
I didn't see them at all. I
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, it was basically totally invisible to me. I didn't see that as an indication of care.
Hmm. Okay. Gotcha. So I mean like it sounds like that fundamental thing was that you were unlovable.
Mhm.
And that story was that experience that you had, like overhearing your parents or having the conversation with your parents, is what kind of unraveled that story, or had you see like, okay, me as a 6-year-old, like I made this up. Were there other places in your life where that kind of like ran the show?
Oh yeah. Yeah, romantic relationships was a big thing for me with that too, is that, I was it was kind of like I was unwanted waiting to happen. I was walking around and everything that
Mm.
my partner did was in the camp of they care about me or they don't care. It's like they love me not. And most of it fell into they love me not. So I was dating somebody at the time and I called them and I shared this with them. And they were like, I'm glad that you saw that, because you're cool. And I hate that you can't tell when people care about you and are demonstrating that they care about you. And so when they said I love you, it was like the first time I heard it.
Hmm.
Like really heard it and believed it.
Wow. And how is like, I mean, I imagine your relationships with people have changed since, not just with that relationship and your parents, but how is relating to people changed or transformed, I guess?
Um, I don't always have to be waiting for rejection. Like a lot of my defensiveness just kind of melted away because what is there to defend? And um I also had this sense of I needed to prove something. I needed to prove that I needed like a reason for me to exist. I needed to justify and so I was so busy trying to do the right thing that I wasn't actually connecting with people. So after seeing that and seeing that, oh, that was kind of a load of crap. I could just be with people, and it's like I experienced my friends differently. I started being able to have conversations with strangers and form new friends and experience what community actually feels like, which is being able to create a bond with someone just kind of from the fact that we share an experience. It might be an identity, it might be like being queer, it might be just we are humans that live in the same environment. And I started being able to build bridges and build connections without worrying about are they going to like me? Are they going to think I'm okay? Are they going to think I'm too weird?
Sounds like a much more empowering way to meet people and that type of thing.
Yeah. Which made a huge difference because I felt super alone at the time, right? Like that was a big reason I felt so bad before I did the forum, as I felt alone. So I just started to create connections with the people around me so that I started to have community where I was.
So it's kind of like you broke that glass box you were talking about, or it, removed it or something.
Yeah, it disappeared. I realized that it was never there to begin with.
It's amazing how like something I think that is never there to begin with can just be so real for
Hmm.
us, like for such a long period of time.
Yeah. It's kind of like I'd been a mime the whole time, pretending I was in a box and then realizing I've been a mime. It hasn't actually been there.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you've done with that, you know, freedom to relate to people
I've done
since
so
like,
many things.
yeah.
Dude, the last several years I've been so full of doing stuff with that. So for one thing, I have this crazy beautiful relationship with my dad now. And like I've been staying with my parents for the last few months before I move, and it's like at the end of the day, there's the time that I spend talking to my dad for 2 hours. That's like no matter what is going on, that's just kind of what ends up happening. And um, we do things together. We have projects together. We go on trips together, um, and we just have this bond that's like unlike anything else. And so that's one big old thing. It also made a huge difference with my transness because we had a lot of we didn't speak for a few years because of conflict about he didn't want to use my pronouns. And now, he introduces me to people as his son without even thinking about it. And I've been really impressed about the strides that he's taken himself to educate himself and to be someone who's open and respectful. And like I also started a nonprofit I started a nonprofit and then I helped out with another nonprofit to relocate trans people who were in crisis, especially in the South, to Oregon, which is a really safe state for trans people. And as I was doing that, he was so supportive of me and would like talk things out with me when I was dealing with problems about that and was like, that's really fucking cool that you're doing that. Um, yeah, and that whole nonprofit thing was brand new too because I was so focused on my own life before that that I didn't even think about being able to help other people like that. Um, but then I was just able to. That box disappeared. Um, So those were a couple things, and then I did, oh my God, a whole bunch of other things. I left my corporate job. I did a lot. I started becoming somebody who made a difference at that job, and then I was like, I'm good, I'm done. And I I started working as a communication coach, and then I was helping people in small businesses. And right now, I'm working with my mom's financial advisor team. We kind of get to be this team of people who want to make a difference in the world of finances and make it accessible for people. And I get to contribute to making a difference for people, caring about things that are bigger than myself. Um, yeah. I also that relationship I was in the forum, I'm no longer in that relationship and I was mad about it for a little while, but then I was able to actually like have a really honest conversation with my ex and bridge that gap and now we're really good friends. Next week we're going to go to an EDM show together. Like we're still really good friends.
Cool.
Yeah. Um
That's super cool.
yeah.
I I feel like one of the things that you said earlier is that from the outside, like your life seemed like it was going great regardless. So to like the people in your life, did they see a difference in you?
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
What did they see? Or did they like comment? I don't know.
Um, I've especially asked my friends this and they've said that I've been way more present and had less it's not just less anxiety, but less insecurity and less sense of I have to be some particular way. And I've gotten to learn more about their lives and they've learned more about my life. They said that I share more openly and I'm just happier. And I started asking the people I care about if they're happy. And that's not something people ask one another very often. Are you happy? And
Mm.
coming
It's a
from a place
confronting
of,
question.
yeah, it really is. And um once I was like, damn, I'm actually happy with my life. That's wild. I never was before. I want to hear about other people's experiences. Um, Sometimes I saw shifts in the people I cared about from having those kinds of conversations just because they started looking at their life and going, what is it that I'm happy about or not happy about? And once you see that, once you ask yourself that, you can actually start to have shifts in those. So it's not like in order to make people happier, I was asking that. It's just kind of a natural result of that. But yeah, I just honestly just started being happy. I was like, I'm never going to kill myself. That's just not something that's going to happen. So now I got to figure out what I want to have fun doing for the rest of my life.
Fuck yeah,
Awesome. So what's next for you?
dude.
I'm moving to Spain. Going to this nomadic period of my life. I want to travel the world. And connect with people from all over. That's what I want to do. I want to, deepen my relationship with my dad even more and with my mom and with all of my friends and make new friends and make community. And yeah, I just want to meet people from all over the world and have a great time and live my, and not to be cliche, but live my best life.
Hey, we love queer people living their best lives.
Right?
Yep. Cool. Make sure you add the girls' trip to the monastery to your list, by the way, because
Okay, I
we're now
will.
doing that.
Yeah. And y'all gotta come visit me in Spain.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I will definitely be there.
Yeah. That's I've never been out of the US, so that could be my first stop.
Sweet.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Allison is a queer, gender nonconforming, multiracial child of Trinidadian immigrants. They have spent nearly a decade as a DEI professional, traveled to 24 countries, and are known for bridging perspectives and evolving communities. When they're not doing the work they love, they're spending time with their family, participating in queer sports, or nerding out on some form of self development, prayer, or meditation. When we met, I experienced you as like this self-expressed badass, kind of a force of nature, to be perfectly honest. Um, but who were you before the forum?
It's so funny, like thinking about it now, because like the year before I did the forum, I had a therapist who I loved, and we were in session, and then she just said, you act like a 50-year-old man who has four kids, no job, and has never saved for retirement. Honestly, I sat there, I was like, you're so right. Why am I living my life like this?
And you were how old at the time?
God, I don't know. Let's see. I was 20, 25, 26. No kids, no debt. Like college degree, just finished graduate school, working in corporate America, and DEI. And but yeah, like my whole life and my whole experience of life was just like that. Like everything was stressful and doomed and all of these things. Um But yeah, I mean that was a year before I did the forum. Right before I did the forum, I was doing like the best I had done in probably a decade. Um, and I'd have like the occasional bout of seeing myself that way, but for the most part, like I mean, I hadn't seen a therapist in 6 months. I didn't feel the need to. I was pretty like happy and stable and content where I was. Um, yeah. So that was kind of how I went into it, with the exception of I hated my job. Like it was the one thing that wasn't working, but I was like, everything else is fine. So, like that's not abnormal. That's just how it is.
Yeah, right. Um, so then what had you, so okay, so everything's great except the job. So what had you tried to make the job better or like your
Oh my God.
perspective on it better, whatever, you
Where
know?
do I start? Okay. I have always had like lots of mentors, and I love like talking to people who have lots of different experiences and then hearing their take on things or how to address things. So I mean, I had talked to probably every mentor I had in my phone. I, like I said, therapy, um, tons of books that I've read, podcasts, like all these different types of things. I even like went to my boss and said, like, I don't feel like a valuable member of this team. And it took like all the courage that I had to say that, you know? But it's just like if after saying that nothing changes and she still like doesn't give a shit or whatever, then it's time to go.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
So what came of that?
Um, Not much. More so just like digging myself in like into a bigger hole because I was like, okay, well, like I've exhausted. What do you mean, like exhausting all those options, or?
Well, like I meant more specifically like I guess when you said that, like what was the response? Like did that change anything at your workplace, you know?
No, because it was awful and annoying. Um, but it was because she had said like you are a valuable member of the team and this and that and the other, but I couldn't hear it, and I
Mm.
couldn't see that I couldn't hear it. Like I was already listening to her through this filter of you don't give a shit about me. You don't, yeah. So even though she said that, my attitude was like, you can say that all you want, but until I see some action behind those words, I'm not going to be dumb enough to believe it. And all that did to me was just like dishearten me more and more and more and make me more jaded. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I am good with all these other things in my life. I don't have to be working this job. No one in this industry gives a shit or is willing to take these risks anyway. So I just want to be happy. Yeah, and I ended my lease. Ended my lease in Birmingham, and I was gonna quit and move to Boston and be a barista in Jamaica Plain. And I was just done. I just wanted to be happy. That's also like ultimately that's one of the things that had me do the form is that I was starting fresh. I'm doing something new, can't hurt, and my mom won't shut up about it, so might as well.
When you did the forum, what changed or what started the change, like the turning point, I guess?
Um, so
Or
I recounted that experience to the forum leader. Like me having that conversation with my boss. Because he was like saying all these things and I was like, I already know all this shit. Like I have read an ungodly amount of books, talked to an ungodly amount of people, but like I hear you what you're saying to these things and it's not making a difference. But he was like popping around. I did it virtually. And he was like popping around to breakout rooms and I like stopped him because like one of the things is don't leave anything incomplete and like be coachable. So I was like, well, I'm getting my coaching because I paid all this money to be here. So I was like, hey, I was like, okay, here's the thing though. Like I have been vulnerable. I went to my boss and I said that I don't feel like a valuable member of the team. And he was like, okay. And he was like, in a second, we're going to get into making a difference versus making a point. And then he moved on to the next room. And I sat there and I was like, holy shit. I did not go in that conversation to make a difference. I went into that conversation to make the point that I'm not a valuable member of this team. And then, like,
mm,
as I continued to listen, I was like, she couldn't win anyway. Like, it wouldn't have mattered because I was so intent on making this point. I had already gathered all of this evidence. You know, like when you reach that point where you're like, I've gathered enough evidence and this is the conclusion. I don't need more evidence to like tell me otherwise. That was like the point I had reached. Um, but yeah, him saying that really had me like tune into more. Like, what else is there? Because that's actually a great fucking point.
yeah, wow. So So then I'm curious what opened up for you in that realization.
Um, that I had fixed ways of seeing things, and that even though the people around me, I mean, like people around me would say like I'm one of the best listeners that they've ever met, and they can say anything that they need to, that they want to. I'm a great worker, like I'm curious and interested in all of these things, and so I believed it too. Um, and I genuinely did, like it was the truth. Like I'm just a great listener. Um, and I just saw that I maybe like that's kind of true, but what if I take the case that I haven't really been listening to anybody at all?
Mm,
And I've only been listening to the way that I already see them or what I have already decided about them. And that's what was like a huge shift for me because um like I like to believe the best in people, and so I'll like very easily idolize people. You know, so it was not even necessarily that's a bad thing, and I think that's part of what I got. It's not like either good or bad, it's just what is. And so I started to look at other relationships and people and perspectives that I had of the world, and be open to that it could be different than what I'd gathered evidence for.
mm,
So did that conversation with your boss all of a sudden have a new light on it because of getting to see, okay, you were listening for what you already believed she was going to say or what you already believed was the case.
Um, it's more so like I just realized that she had no shot. Like I had already reached a point where she had no shot. So it opened up it had me think about like if I went in there to make a difference, who would I have been in that conversation? Like what would I have said? What and I didn't even need to know all those things to know that it would not, I mean like I was like, yeah, well, it definitely would have been that. You know, but it was just like also the way that I say because I was trying to like be vulnerable. I was trying to have this like crucial conversation and all of these things. But you know, if you've already come to a conclusion and you 100% believe it, then what's the point in having a conversation?
mm.
And so here
And
I am saying, like, you're not listening to me. You don't listen to anything that I say. You've already made up your mind. You're just listening to me because you want me to feel like I am a valuable member of this team and give my opinion. And here I am, and I'm the one doing it.
yeah, that's brilliant. And so I know that you mentioned like looking at your relationships and things that you had kind of already believed. I'm curious of how like those got impacted once you saw this. Like, did this affect your relationships?
Yeah, the one of the biggest ones was with my dad. Um, the farm leader was talking about this distinction called rackets. And he was saying that he was like, there's a racket is a complaint that something, um, shoot, what is it? It's like a consistent complaint, like a reoccurring complaint that you have. Um, and I was like, oh yeah, I I have a racket. My dad is a father to everyone except me. And then he said like there's I saw your expression, Alex. And so the thing with my dad is like he mentors tons of young men, like hundreds, um, over time. And so, you know, I'd seen him like go on trips with people and, you know, go to their graduations and do all of these things, um, and spend all this time with them, but I felt like he was just like never really talking to me. Um, and yeah, I just felt more like like a pawn in his game, sort of, or like a way to
Mm,
like uplift his social status. So it felt like all of my wins or the reason why like he would support me in doing something was so that he could look better. Um, so so yeah, so I realized that I had this like fixed point of view of him that he didn't actually care about me that much, and I was more of like an insurance policy to him than I was anything else, because at the end of the day, no matter how much he pissed me off, or even if he still did, or my mom or whatever, like I would take care of my parents. There's no question about that. That has never been something I think anybody would ever question. It's just part of who I am. I will do it. And it felt like a cage, because I felt like he knew that. Um, but yeah, anyway, so the leader said that there's uh, a huge payoff that we get out of it. And so I'm like, hang on a minute. What payoff are you talking about? Because there is not a payoff. I want a relationship with my dad, and he doesn't put in any effort. And so I start listening and stuff, and he's like interacting with somebody else. And I realize that, there's this time where I was like 4 years old, and we were playing hide and go seek, and my dad would come in and like try and find us. And so there I am, like 4 years old. I'm sitting behind this hamper, in the bathroom, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm gonna win this game. My dad's gonna think I'm so smart. Like a typical 4 year old, you know? And so he comes in and I hear him. Um, I hear my sister laugh, so I know he's found my sister. And then a couple minutes later, I hear my brother, and I'm like, yes, like I had the best spot. Like he's gonna be so proud of me. And I sat there, and I was like waiting, like, just where you're like fighting to stay still and quiet. And he goes into the kitchen, and I hear like my whole family laughing and talking or whatever, and then I hear them kind of like go up the stairs. And so I'm like, okay, they just need a minute, um before I before they realize I'm not there. And I just sat there and I waited and I waited. But there was nothing. And what I realized is that in that moment, I decided that my dad loved my brother and my sister more than me, and that he cared about other people more than me. And I called him and I talked to him and told him about it. He doesn't even remember it. I mean, like, he was like, I don't even remember that. And he was like, I'm sorry I didn't find you, but like, I don't remember. And I was like,
It's hide and seek, but it's devastating for a 4-year-old.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, totally. And but then I could see, like, just like you were talking about Elliot, like I could see that it was clouding my view of him. And it didn't matter what he did. I could only see it through the lens of he's a bad father, or he doesn't care about me, or he doesn't care about me as much as the others, or he only cares about me so much as it makes him look good. Yeah. So I called him and I said, I'm sorry for making you out to be a bad father.
What'd he say?
Well, he did what he normally does. He like there was no change over there with him. He was just like, "Yeah, I'm already over that shit." Like I knew that. I mean, I know that. He was like, and it was like, but I mean, like I've done everything I can in this and that. And I was like, it, he was like, but what's going on, or like why'd you call? Seems like there's something upsetting you, and there's something else. Um, and so I said what it was, and he gave all this advice like he does, like I was a fraternity boy. And for the first time, though, instead of hearing it like he doesn't think I know what I'm doing, and he just like sucks at listening to what's going on in my life and I can't say anything, all I could hear, like all the translation I could hear was, I love you. And I realized that he gives that advice and he repeats himself over and over and all those things because he just wants my life to be good. Like he just wants me to be happy. And he will repeat that advice how many ever times it takes so that I can be happy.
Because if he didn't care and he didn't want your life to be great, he wouldn't say anything about that. He'd just be like, wow, that sucks. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And I just couldn't see it. I couldn't see it until then. I was like, wow, this guy like really cares about me. He really does. Like more than just like looking good, because there's so many other things that he did that I don't know that he's talked about or whatnot, but also like who gives a fuck? Like this is my relationship with my dad, and that was like the other thing that the forum leader had got me present to before I went and called him was that there was a cost. And that co the cost of me having that fixed point of view based on this story that I made up when I was 6 was a relationship with my dad that I wanted.
What was your payoff, by the way?
Getting to be right about it, feeling justified, justified about it, and having a reason like not to, I don't know, pursue my full potential or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I just got to be righteous and everybody believed me.
So after that conversation with your dad, how, like, what's your relationship with him now? Like, how has that conversation changed things?
Oh my God. Um, it's it's just a completely different relationship. Like before I would call him if something went wrong, if it was a holiday or his birthday or my birthday, and like that was when we would talk. And we'd maybe like check in once a month, twice a month. I live like 2 hours away from home. I think I was going home like 3 times a year or something. Yeah, I go home every month. And I talk to my dad like usually more than once a week. Usually more than once a week. And he just like wants to know what's going on in my life, and I want to know what's going on in his life. But yeah, we've been on trips together. We plan dinners like weeks in advance. I'm taking him to see Andrea Bocelli in concert here in Birmingham on the 22nd. Yeah. Um, because we used to love uh listening to him when I was a kid.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's the relationship that I wanted with him. It's the relationship that I wanted with him, where we're more like friends and in each other's lives than like a mentor-mentee sort of thing.
Yeah. So I'm also curious, has this affected other relationships in your life? Like how you approach them, anything like that?
I think there's a great point there about like, you're four and somebody who is supposed to be like one of your main sources of love. You're like, oh my God, he doesn't love me as much as he loves other people. There's something that that 4-year-old says about themselves. Is that something that you saw show up in any of your other relationships or even at work?
Um, yeah, that I'm not important to people.
Mhm.
Because if I'm not important to my family, then I'm obviously not important to anybody else. And I didn't realize how much I had believed that. Like, I read all the books, whatever, there's all these affirmations, all these things, and there's like chosen family, like I mean, it's not like everything in my life was shit. Um, but yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
But you're saying that it shows up as, feeling like you don't matter, which certainly matches with the thing that wasn't working in your life when you went into the forum was work and going to your boss and being like, I feel like I don't matter. And that no matter what she said in response, it don't matter because you have the
Yeah.
being right about that you don't matter.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's like a core belief. Yeah, a core belief. And because it's so ingrained in my brain, it's something that I think like shows up every now and then, but not nearly as much as it used to. And it also just like doesn't have power over my life, you know? I can be like, oh, yeah, I remember that story. That's a familiar conversation. Can we move on to the next thing now?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then I'm curious about in the space, oh my goodness, in the space of this his transformation, what are you like what's next? What are you creating next?
Like
What's on
what's
the
that?
horizon for you in general?
Yeah.
Well, this podcast. Definitely, it like interviewing more people and having more conversations about what's possible in for queer people. And challenging the I don't know, accepted narrative that we're kind of all fucked. Um, yeah, so that's a big one. Um,
Okay, say more about that. Because that's a big old thing for the queer community. This pervasive sense of we're all fucked. So like what is it that you what does challenging that mean for you?
you know, I used to think that it meant like providing evidence and facts and whatever, but what I've realized is that what like actually makes a difference for people is hearing from each other. And seeing what other people have created so that you can like open up your world into the fact that it is a possibility for you too. Like there is nothing you could have told me that would have convinced me that I could have the relationship that I currently do with my dad. But if I heard another queer person who had a similar experience to that, I would start to be open to the fact that it might happen for me. Like that there is a world in which that's possible and I get to create what that future looks like instead of be dominated by the circumstances.
Which is what you get to be doing right now, is you're sharing your experience with your dad that somebody out there might be like, I couldn't have that.
Hmm.
Yep.
And you're like, you too.
And
Yeah,
you
I mean
too.
like, I just feel like so much of connecting with other queer people, like you end up in these damning conversations about how your family doesn't get you and or they try some things but they still can't get it right and um new laws being passed or things that are being proposed or what they're taking out of libraries and all these things. And it's not that those things aren't like important to know about and that, there's truth to a lot of those things. Um, but I just feel like we've forgotten that to have more space for joy and for celebration and for possibility. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like it's that whole thing of like if I'm not angry and if I'm not aware of every law that's passed or every bill that's being proposed, like all these things, then I'm not being a good person of the queer community, or I'm not like queer enough, or I haven't had enough queer experiences, or I don't really get it.
Yeah.
And I think it like causes like a breakage in that sense of belonging with the queer community, which is like an amazing community to be a part of.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just, like making that possible again and having people have these conversations where it doesn't have like having our whole community see that it does not have to be that way. You don't have to have your life go like that to be queer or to get it or get others people's experiences or what's going on.
Yeah. And I think something else that just occurred to me too as you were creating this is that by like when we create the queer joy in the community, it gives it more room because it can be really hard to not fall into the despair sort of spiral in the way that things are currently being talked about. Just it's very easy to just kind of get sucked into it and then perpetuate it, and then it's like
Yeah.
this negative feedback loop. And so I like how we're like getting to be an interruption here. And I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, if that stuff empowers you, go for it. Right? Like there was a point in my life where learning about the all those things and keeping up with those things helped me like like it lit a fire under my ass, you know?
Yeah.
And but the thing is like that fire burns out, like it gets old after a while and it started to be something that was killing me instead of something that was driving me forward. And all I was doing was getting more angry and more depressed and more upset and farther away from people instead of closer.
Yeah. Well, especially because it's like it's the difference between running from something and running towards something, you know?
Yeah,
Because one of them is like fear and survival, and the other is like you get to create something, and you're like it's like you get to live for something rather than in spite of something, and that's just it's the
right.
difference is night and day.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm not running away from something because it's trying to kill me. I'm running towards something that I want,
Yeah.
or I'm running for the sake of running.
Hmm. Awesome.
Thanks for joining us for this episode.
If you have follow-up questions or something you want us to explore in future episodes, feel free to email us at contact@queerbecomings.com or DM us on Instagram at queerbecomings.
If something inspired you in today's podcast, we invite you to follow it. Go find out what's possible beyond surviving. That risk might be worth it. That conversation you're scared to have might not turn out the way you thought.
Yeah, who knows? Just try taking a new action and see what happens. Or maybe just ask yourself, where could I give myself a little space to dream?